Walther logo still has an extremely high reputation, whether you're talking about their smaller guns like the PP, PPK, whether you're talking about the 9mm guns or whatever. In America, it has the same sound as Cadillac.
And this reputation Walther burnishes time and again at the annual SHOT Show as here in Las Vegas. For 4 days, some 35,000 visitors crowd into the convention center to visit the world's largest fair for firearms, munitions, and outdoor equipment. On 500,000 square meters of exhibition space, more than 1,300 exhibitors present themselves to the international public. In the midst of this mammoth exhibition is the German firearms manufacturer with more than 110 years of tradition, the Walther firm. The SHOT Show, organized by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF for short, was first held in 1979. The acronym SHOT stands for the theme of the fair: shooting, hunting, and outdoor trade. The SHOT Show provides buyers and sellers with a fair of their own, so they no longer need to piece together information from sports fairs. The response increases year by year. Each year, more mailings and telephone calls are needed in carrying on this event. Walther arrives with the latest developments in its luggage, and naturally with the weapon that is already legendary, the P99. Here in Ulm, the Walther weapons made in Germany are produced. The good old classics like the PPK are still being manufactured. Using the most modern machinery, the Umarex Walther Group turns out some 300,000 weapons a year, with, as ever, the human role essential. It is people who tend the machines, inspect the finished parts, and assemble the weapons. Approximately 600 personnel of the Umarex Walther Group ensure the utmost precision. The P99. Durable plastics make it possible. The P99 with an empty magazine weighs about 77 grams. Despite the light weight, the user maintains complete control. This is thanks to the barrel, which is just above the shooting hand, and to the resulting reduced tilt, as well as the damping effect of the grip, and also, of course, the recoil-absorbing interchangeable backstrap, available in 3 sizes. The magazine holds 16 cartridges of 9mm caliber parabellum. The magazine of the US model, 10 cartridges of the caliber 40 S&W. The trigger system emphasizes maximum security and lightning-fast readiness to fire. One recognizes the cocked weapon by the protruding firing pin, easily identifiable in the dark by touch. The loading status is indicated by a red mark and is also identifiable by touch on the end of the extractor. Changing the magazine and pulling the trigger are easily possible for either left or right-handers. The P99 has no external safety. Instead, there are 4 safety mechanisms, independent of each other: the striker safety, the trigger safety, the decocker safety, and the drop lever safety. The P99 is designed for every use. Laser and pocket lights can be attached without difficulty. Yet the route to high-tech could not be taken overnight. The ongoing development began long ago. In the Thuringian forest, firearms have been crafted for centuries. The resources of the forest and the mining or iron ore in the region provide ideal circumstances. Early on, the quality of the gunmakers and armorers from Zelamilis and Sul is already very high. Master gunsmiths of the guilds watch over the quality of the weapons produced. No barrel may leave the workshop without a mark of certification. The steel is still forged with a hammer, and the production of every single part, like for example a trigger, demands much craftsmanship and time on the part of the smith. Next, the gun stalkers take over the fabrication of the stock, and the engravers artistically decorate the weapon. A fine example of this old gunsmith craftsmanship is this matchlock musket from the 17th century. But not only weapons during this period, tools too are made in Thuringia. Then, with the beginning of industrialization after 1800, the guild's significance declines. The proclamation of freedom of trade in 1863 puts an end to the narrowness of medieval guilds. Nevertheless, little changes in the situation of the small Thuringia workshops. As before, the master carries on at the vise alone, or with a few hands. What is unchanged too is the high quality and good reputation of weapons from Zella-Milis and Sul. In these years, only a few companies succeed in making the transition to large-scale industrial production. One is the Weihrauch firm. The military orders for arms toward the mid-19th century demand a rational production process based on teamwork, no longer the handcrafting methods of the gunmakers. As a result, for a time, there's a decline in orders in the Zella-Milis-Sul region. So as to be able to turn out more weapons, firms resort to the new drop forge technology. As shown here, huge board lift drop hammers are driven by water power. The hammer falls on a forging die over which glowing steel has been applied. The hydraulic rolls raise the hammer again. With this procedure, for example, triggers or pistol grips are turned out in the drop forge and time is saved. In 1897, after the Zella-Milis proof house has existed for 4 years, the 1 millionth weapon is test-fired. This amounts to some 250,000 weapons a year. Production of the next million will take only 3 more years. In this period of time, the firm Karl Walther comes into its own. In 1827, August Walther, the father of the firm's founder, is born. After August's apprenticeship with a brazier, he broadens his capabilities by working with an engraver, and after a 2-year sojourn in North America, practices the craft of operating a brass and white metal foundry. In the municipal archives of Zella-Milis can be found the first mention of August Walther in an application to build a pigsty. The date is August 8, 1877. The founder of the firm, Karl Wilhelm Freund Walther, is born in 1858. He learns the craft of gunmaker, works as an assistant to a master gunmaker, and later with a manufacturer, so as to acquire additional familiarity with machine building. At first, he produces only hunting and target rifles in a small workshop in his father's house on Katzenbuckel. Karl Walther's neighbor is the revolver maker Pickert. Karl marries Pickert's daughter, Mina Georgina, at the age of 30. The craft of gunmaking is in the family. Karl's mother comes from the old gun manufacturing family Pister, whose activity goes back to the middle of the 18th century. There is as yet no separation between the working world and the domestic sphere. On the street side are the dwelling rooms and in the back the workshop. Thus, Karl Walther lives in the tradition of the Zella-Milis handicraft masters. Karl Walther applies on September 15, 1901 for his examination as a master craftsman. Within 3 days, he's required to present his masterwork, namely a Martini rifle system. 10 days later, he is accepted in the Rifle Makers Guild. The workshop space quickly proves to be too small. The adjoining barn and stable constructions are enlarged. 7 years later, Karl acquires an adjoining garden property from his neighbor Pickert, which allows him to build a new workshop space. From 1912 on, there is a 2-story building that finally merits the name Weapons Factory. The original workshop's basic components still stand today. A letterhead pictures the pocket pistol Model 1, documenting that Karl Walther is concentrating on a new and promising line of products, pocket pistols modeled on the Browning pistol. The mass production of self-loading pistols calls for efficient boring and milling machines that are driven by a naphthalene gas motor. Walther's sons, George, Fritz, and Willie, learn the gunmaker's craft in their father's firm. George Walther, as the family's second technician, in a sense represents his brother Fritz. And he lives in this villa on the other side of the valley, with a view of the weapons factory. Today, a school field center is located there. Brother Lothar is learning the toolmaker's trade. It is particularly the oldest son, Fritz Walther, who combines professional, technical, and constructive capability with persistence and energy. Beside the later manufacturing site, he built a spacious villa that reflects his position in the weapons factory. Today his residence has become a retirement home. Fritz Walther's diploma piece as journeyman is a miniaturized milling machine. Today it is in the Zella Miles Town Museum. Fritz's work earned him a certificate of apprenticeship with the notation "very good." The younger Walther son, Eric, becomes a businessman. Later, he directs the economic fortunes of the Walther enterprise. After the Second World War, his country home becomes a youth hostel. The ancestor of all Walther pistols is the Model 1. Early ads indicate that the weapons factory Oscar Will in Zella Miles is producing these arms under commission from the Walther firm. Notably, the mother of Oscar Will was born a Walther. The Stukenbrook catalog for 1912 shows the Walther weapon below right, as well as arms by the Walther competitors, FN, Browning, and Mauser. The Model 1 with striker pin bolt in the .635 caliber is produced from 1908 onward. The first make of Model 1 with 15 narrow cocking grooves and the inscription on the slide, ERMG Domestic and Foreign Patent AFG. The second make with the inscription DRP and Foreign Patents, DRP stands for Deutsches Reichspatent, has 12 somewhat wider cocking grooves. The third make, again with 12 cocking grooves, the notation Walther's Patent and the Walther banner emblem, which is registered on October 8, 1912 at the German Patent Office. The right side of the three varieties. Here their differences become clear. The first make with a push-button safety. The second make with a push-button safety. The third make with a push-button safety and breech block bolt stop. In 1909, Model 2 with internal hammer, also in the caliber .635, which son Fritz has further developed and improved from Model 2. The breech block, which extends to the front over the barrel, now requires an ejector opening. Here the three models are on view. The differences are recognizable on both sides. The standard make with the Walther banner, 9 wide cocking grooves, and a rear sight slot. On the right side, the weapon number is embossed on the trigger guard. The service instructions, no larger than a pack of cigarettes. The second model with a moved-out countersunk rear sight, which is supplied only on special order. In the early 60s, a collector had Model 2 embossed on the slide. The Walther brochure describes the automatic rear sight. Collectors long argued as to whether this model was also produced by Walther. The automatic rear sight. With the notch protruding at the left, the weapon is loaded. To the right, the notch is concealed, thus no cartridges are in the gun. A later make. Here the finger grooves are in the opposite direction. On the slide appear the place names Zella and St. Blaise, for Zella and Miles will not be consolidated until 1919. In 1910, Model 3 in the caliber .765 is introduced. Model 3 is a slightly enlarged variety of Model 2. A turning point. Here the Walther firm brings out a weapon with the ejector opening on the left side, 13 narrower cocking grooves, and the CW emblem on the butt plates. With this weapon of more powerful caliber, Walther gets into the market sector of police and military weaponry with its huge demand. To the right, in front of the barrel bush, is a safety catch for the breech block. This is the Vulcan make of Model 3. Messer Fabric Vulcan replaces the Walther lettering. Here there are 12 somewhat wider grooves on the slide, and in the oval, instead of the CW insignia, is the designation caliber .765. Probably this model was for export, and Walther had no export license. That could also explain the stamp of the middleman on the right side, Tenson registered, trademark, and Krupp steel on the breech. In 1910, the Model 4 arrives. It's also of .765 caliber, but with a larger grip. Model 4 is in demand with the police and the armed forces. The first make, also called transitional model, 12 narrow cocking grooves and a breech hold in front right at the slide. Model 4 has a longer barrel and a larger magazine capacity than Model 3, namely 9 shots. Here too there are butt plates, with only the caliber denoted. In the second type, the differences are clearly visible. Model 4 is the enlargement of Model 3, with the cocking groove pattern of the earlier Model 2, with a high slide, 7 wide cocking grooves, and a rear sight groove. The manufacture proceeds from 1910 to 1928. Walther leaves the making of individual parts to local arms production, thus utilizing fallow manufacturing capacity. A third variation, a somewhat flatter slide, 7 wide cocking grooves, and a notch. The fourth type, 15 narrow finger grooves and a rear sight. Next to the Walther banner, the stamp Heinrich Krieghoff. On the right side, the Walther inscription is superimposed, perhaps again pointing to export. The year 1913 brings Model 5, an improvement of Model 2 with the caliber .635 and narrower cocking grooves. The first make with 16 narrow cocking grooves and a rear sight groove. The serial number is on the left side behind the trigger guard on the grip. In Model 2, the serial number is in front on the trigger guard. The second make, also with 16 narrow cocking grooves, plus a stationary rear sighting. In 1914, the First World War breaks out. In the following year, the Walther firm's founder, Karl, dies. Orders for arms increase during the war, and soon the factory on Katzenbuckel can no longer keep up with the urgent demand. On the Merzenberg, above the old weapons factory, a new factory facility is built, and over the years is constantly enlarged. It has a rifle range, an administration building, a sewage plant, an iron depot, and storage and dispatching facilities with social rooms on the ground and first floors. In 1915, Model 6 with 7 wide cocking grooves and rear sight is introduced. This blowback pistol with a caliber of 9mm parabellum is the enlarged version of Model 4. It is intended to succeed the Army Pistol 08, which is expensive to produce and accordingly to buy. The new model is accepted by the High Command, but it is put into only limited service, for the weapon's construction is too weak for the 9mm parabellum caliber. Nor does the construction of a strong firing spring and a massive striking piece help. Mishaps keep recurring. After only 2 years and the production of only about 1,000 of Model 6, further manufacture is suspended. Accordingly, Walther's Model 6 is today one of the most sought-after and expensive collector's items. After cancellation of Model 6, in 1917 Model 7 appears, again with caliber .635. The first version has 9 wide cocking grooves and rear sight. The weapon is the smaller version of Model 6 and incorporates some features of Model 5. But Model 7 optically also strongly resembles Model 4, which, however, still has the ejector opening on the left side. This pistol is favored by officers and staff personnel. The second version with 16 narrow cocking grooves and again with rear and front sight. This model is unsuccessful, and after a year its manufacture is abandoned. Although these pistols are technically quite good and not overly expensive, nevertheless they have no real significance in modern war. At mid-1916, the French and British offensive, with its overwhelming firepower, gets underway. The force of the artillery surpasses anything the German soldier has yet encountered. Heavy 38-centimeter naval artillery and 40-centimeter howitzers smash the German positions and access routes. The German General Staff has to rethink the situation. Armament production is increased via the Hindenburg program, which also includes the production of machine guns. Walther receives an order from the War Ministry for locks for the Maxim machine gun, which is so extensive that pistol production finally almost completely ceases. But these all-out war efforts fail to save the Germans. Now German streets are unsafe. There's a demand for pocket pistols for self-defense. In 1920, Walther brings out Model 8 with caliber .635. This highly esteemed weapon is the basis for the later PP models, and for the first time bears the inscription Zelamilis Thuringia. The first make with the locking slide on the trigger guard and an interior extractor. The second make with locking slide and exterior extractor. The third make with spring-borne trigger guard and open extractor. In 1921, the successful Model 9 appears with a .635 caliber. Up to now, the smallest Walther weapon, a lightweight ladies' pistol, above the earlier model with rear groove, below the later version. Forerunners are Model 1 and the FN Baby. Left, the first model with an internal, right, the second version with an open extractor hook. Above the first model without, below the second version with magazine safety, which was introduced relatively late. Here the model without magazine safety. The second version with magazine safety. The first model is supplied with an enamel shield on the butt plate. In the second version, in the interest of economy, there is an exposed screw plate. Model 9 is a luxury item, a gilded and engraved pistol with ivory butt plates. It belonged to the wife of Fritz Walther. A unique object in caliber .635 whose origin is uncertain. The basis of this intelligent firearm is Model 9. The trigger mechanism makes it possible to carry the pistol when it's loaded. Meanwhile, the inflation in post-war Germany results in the printing of emergency currency. The situation is bad for the manufacturers, too. But Walther's experience proves that a manufacturer can survive hard economic times if he offers precisely what the customers want. Walther seeks market niches and finds one by supplying a semi-automatic shotgun which goes on sale in 1923. Walther commissions an Erfurt firm, the Deutsche Werke AG, to produce the rifle. Later, Walther improves and distributes it. The weapon, in contrast to its competitors, has a knee lever bolt similar to that of the Luger pistol. But the knee lever bolt opens to the downside and thereby works almost the same as the bolt of the Maxim machine gun. The Erfurt firm, as former Royal Gun Factory, is experienced in this phase of production, which may be why Walther had selected the company. In about the mid-1920s, Walther introduces the semi-automatic rifle, models 1 and 2, caliber .22 long. Unlike the competing models from Dreise and Rode, these weapons are elegant and light. In the following years, small bore shooting becomes a popular sport. The German sport model, marketed in 3 versions, and the so-called Meisterbüchse, master rifle, follow. Toward the end of the 1920s, the German demand for weapons is covered by the domestic manufacturers. But as imports dwindle, exports reach new heights. From 1924 on, Walther also produces calculating machines and later bicycle parts as well. It seems wise to have more than one iron in the fire. In addition, residences for master craftsmen and other senior staff members are provided as social benefits. In 1939, Walther recruits Karl Seidler as a journeyman.
Sehr gut haben die sich gekümmert die Leute.
They've done a good job of caring for the workers. This house, where we are now, was built by the Walther firm. And my colleague Bart was a foreman over there, and they got the houses first. All these houses were put up by Walther. The firm did something for its people. In 1919, the advantages of a revolver and those of a self-loading pistol are combined in the police pistol, the PP, with a caliber of .765. An early prototype without PP slide inscription and with the serial number inside. The magazine has a metal extension. The wooden butt plates have a checkering. Characteristics of the earlier models are the protruding muzzle, the broad safety lever with a 90-degree recess, the heavy hammer, and the magazine retaining button. A further prototype, also typically without PP slide inscription. The serial number 2 is on the front side of the grip. The PPs can be cocked and fired rapidly by simply pulling the trigger. but for precision firing, one can also shoot with the cocked weapon. With the PP double-action trigger, the Walther firm made a great hit, an example of the creativity and innovative thinking within the enterprise. A prototype or transitional model, a modified older slide, and a massive half-covered hammer. As for the serial number, here Walther backtracks. The number 4E is the continuation of the numbers assigned to Model 8. On this weapon, too, there is no PP insignia on the slide. In 1931 comes the PPK, the Polizeipistole Kriminal, also with .765 caliber. It has a somewhat shorter grip and barrel. This is the later version with a 90-degree safety, PPK slide inscription, and magazine extension. The first models only have the lettering PP because possibly there exists as yet no suitable PPK roller stamp. The uncontested expert in the realm of PP and PPK weaponry is James L. Rankin from Coral Gables, Miami, Florida. He has written 3 books on this theme. But what sparked the development of these weapons? Is it only the adaptation of an ingenious idea? For the idea of a double-action trigger stems from the year 1900, from the Czech constructor Alois Tomyška, and this led to the Little Tom model. Fritz Walther took over from there in 1924.
Well, at the time that they were being developed was in the late 20s, and the Walther Company had actually not really had a major gun out for 10 years. Right after World War I, they had a .22 target pistol, and they were looking for a .32 caliber pistol to go into the market, as was a lot of different arms company at that time. And they struck upon the idea, I'm sure it was Fritz Walther himself, of the double action part of the gun, and that was their number one part that came to being a gun. It was probably more for the paramilitary who carry a gun in a holster all the time. And of course, when they made the gun, the PP came out first. It's a slightly larger firearm than the PPK. The PPK followed, and it would be more of a concealable gun. Again, whether you had it in a holster underneath your arm or in a holster on your hip, having a double-action gun would allow you to have a pistol in the chamber and ready to fire much quicker. Well, the special design, again, was on the PP or the PPK, was their double-action concept, where you could load your magazine, place it into the gun, work the receiver back, and have a shell in the gun, and take the hammer and put it down and be able to shoot by the double-action concept of pulling the trigger, which meant that you didn't have to go through the other actions of then taking and bringing your hammer back to shoot your gun, or actually taking your receiver back to take a shell out of the magazine and into the chamber, which made for a much quicker situation, and a situation where a man could carry a cartridge in the chamber of the gun ready to fire, but not with a hammer cocked. And the danger that would be involved there is self-explanatory. The difference is one is slightly smaller, but the main differences in the PP and the PPK is that the PP is probably about 5 to 6 ounces heavier than the PPK. It carries one more round in the magazine than the PPK. It's approximately ½ an inch longer. Another major difference, the PP is somewhat thicker here in the grip because the back strap is shown, and was designed more as a holstered gun. The PPK, again, being smaller, somewhat shorter, is much flatter because the grip completely goes around. considered a wraparound grip, where this is a two-piece grip. The PP is two pieces to the grip. PPK is one solid wraparound grip. Those were grips used in the 30s and up through 1945. Later on in post-war period, what we say post-war, World War II, the PPK grips were usually split. This made for a much more concealable pistol, a flatter pistol, one that maybe would be used in a shoulder holster. But those that were made during World War II era, the German era, they were carried in holsters more than anything else themselves.
An early make of the PP, with 90-degree safety, broad safety catch, and an early design of hammer and magazine. A PP of caliber .635 without signal pin. These weapons carry only the proof mark of a crown above N, and only a few were manufactured. A PP variation is a target pistol of .765 caliber with extended barrel and gilded trigger with a dull chrome finish. The barrel is made of a Burda special steel alloy antinet. The target pistol and a PP with the same barrel length, but a protruding barrel. A PP stamped PDM for Polizeidienst München. This PP stamp, NSKK, stands for Nationalsozialistisches Kraftfahrerkorps. A PP is a complimentary gift in a leather box. The weapon is richly decorated and the safety lever, magazine head, and trigger are gilded, a very costly present. A PP of the caliber .22 long. It has a round slide and a grip which blends into the slide. It is esteemed by hunters for training since the practice ammunition that it uses is considerably cheaper. Two PDM models compared. The PP above has a funnel-shaped barrel and a bottom magazine release. The PPK below has an aluminum grip and is the only PPK variation with this magazine release. A demonstration case with two inner compartments for the firm's sales representatives from the 1930s. The case contains all the parts of the PP and PPK in models that are furnished in dull chrome or burnished black. There is also a glass pistol for demonstrating how the weapon functions. The German pistol producers no longer have competitors, for after Hitler's takeover of power in 1933, German domestic arms production was speeded and the import of handguns prohibited. These pistols sell briskly. Naturally, Walther's own advertising emphasizes the many uses of the product. The Reichsbank equips itself with Walther models. And not only the State Bank, the Reichsfinance Administration also stocks up on the PPK. So does the Deutsche Reichspost. Soon the weapons seem to be everywhere. A PPK party weapon with nationality mark on both the butt plates and on the leather pocket. As a complimentary gift, its dedication on the slide. The Nazis hand out such weapons as rewards for deserving party members. A silvered and engraved PPK in a luxury model, but the serial numbers on the slide and on the grip are not identical. The weapon was assembled either by Walther at the end of the war or by the Americans from leftover parts. This luxury model is a gilded and engraved PPK with ivory butt plates on a marble base. It was a shooting range prize in the Main-Franconian district, serving as a traveling trophy for contests. This too is possible, a PPK with lengthened brown plastic grip, so that even a person without hands can use it. This 2 centimeter long extension is mounted under the magazine. On the PP, the extension is only 1.5 centimeters. PPKs with inscriptions on the front side of the grips. The guns of the SA indicated the company and the address. Ready for delivery, a PPK 765 including accessories in its original packing. Production of this PPK of smaller caliber 635 is soon abandoned. Accessories, a PPK with luminous front sight that can be mounted on any standard model. It is meant to facilitate shooting in the dark. A PPK 9mm short. This model is primarily for export. The PP is also produced as caliber. But for every 25 PPs, there is only one PPK. The position underneath the magazine catch is typical for the later mass-produced gun. At this time, Walther depends extensively on advertising, as is evident by the deck of cards with a PPK shown on the back side. The PP and the PPK are promoted to huntsmen for protection and for finishing shots. Walther is never short of ideas. In the summer of 1932, the firm puts the latest development on the market. A starter pistol, Walther's first blank cartridge gas pistol of 6mm caliber. 6 cartridges are pushed into a cylinder with the help of a tubular magazine under the barrel. The cases are ejected from an opening. In August of this same year, Walther receives a patent for this innovation. The demand for Walther weapons is so extensive that again even the enlarged factory installation becomes too small. So as to meet orders for the Reichswehr and the subsequent armament of Hitler, the factory complex is expanded. New factory halls are put up, the rifle range is enlarged, and a power and heating plant installed. For the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, Walther develops a new self-loading pistol of .22 caliber. The RWS Munitions Factory supplies the .22 cartridges. With the Olympics pistol, the first 5 places in the game's rapid-fire shooting contest are won. At the right, the Swede Thorsten Ullman shortly before the competition. With his Walther pistol, he will win the bronze medal. Erich Krempel left in the picture. He'll take second place in the target pistol shooting at 50 meters. Getting ready for the contest, the practice range of cornering the competition with his Walther Olympics pistol. The Brandenburger will win the gold medal for Germany. Honoring the winners. Van Ooyen with the laurel wreath. At right, a silver medal winner, First Lieutenant Heinz Hux. At left, Ullman. Ullman wins the target pistol shooting contest. At right, Krempel. On the left, the Frenchman Jamonier. This is the only existing prototype of the Olympics pistol. Experiments are first carried out with a caliber .765. RWS and DWM ammunition is used. The weapon is from the collection of Dr. Sturgis. This ad shows an early model of the Olympics pistol. Clearly visible is the contrivance in front of the trigger guard to which the weights can be attached.
Hier habe ich eine Pistole, Walther Sport, Modell 1932.
I have here a Walther Sport model pistol of 1932. I must say that the 1932 model is only all right considering the fact that this weapon was already on the market in 1925. The pistol was developed from the grip of the Walther Pistol Model 6. As can clearly be seen, after the First World War, the Model 6 could no longer be bought. It was not produced any longer. Walther took the existing grips and reworked them for a .22 pistol. The result was this sport pistol, with a round barrel. And Fritz Walther redesigned this weapon as a rapid-firing pistol for the 1932 Olympics in Los Angeles. Our German Heinz Hux used this pistol in Los Angeles in winning a silver medal. The weapon that followed is the Walther Olympics. Here, still with a cylindrical barrel in caliber .22, which was constructed for the 1936 Olympics. It is a more modern pistol with a striker bolt and with weights. And the weapon which came after that is the same model,
ist das gleiche Modell, nur mit einem
with an
Actionlauf.
angular barrel. Here I
ich
have a
eine
fast-firing pistol with an
Schnellfeuerpistole mit
aluminum
einem
lock, a somewhat lighter lock.
Verschluss, etwas leichterer Verschluss. Und unsere deutsche Mannschaft
With
hat
this pistol, our German team won 5 medals in the 1936 Olympics in the pentathlon competition.
1936 gewonnen. Es gibt auch noch
There was
eine
also a hunting pistol, which, as the name indicates,
wie der Name schon
Walther
sagt,
produced
für die
for
deutsche
German
Jägerschaft
huntsmen's
zum
shooting
Jagd- und
practice.
Bogenschießen gebaut wurde von Walther
It has a
mit einem
10-centimeter
10
barrel,
Lauf,
also in caliber 22. The weapon was very well thought of at the time. This ad from the Geico catalog shows all 3 of the successful pistols. Advertising for the Walther small caliber rifles and the Olympics pistol. At the Helsinki World Championship in 1937, these contestants once more are using the successful Walther models. All first places are won with Walther pistols. Cornelius van Ooyen, center, is again a contestant. The successes in the shooting sport are not accidental. In the Walther family, the marksman tradition goes back a long way. This photo from 1890 shows Karl Walther in front of his association's old clubhouse. This traveling trophy reflects the tradition that was carried on by Karl Walther's sons, and the family firm's weapons are far ahead in the competitions. The German championship team of 1924 at left Otto Weyrauch, with him George Walther, Hilmar Stutzer, and Hermann Weyrauch Jr. The German winners in the small caliber Class B of 1931, left Otto Weyrauch, with him Horst Barthelmess, Willy Wagner, the Walther employee Erich Spur, Ludwig Heller as the team captain, and Rudolf Müllich. The German pistol team in Zella-Milas in 1932. The best shooter from the Walther family is George Walther, who has already won medals in various earlier contests. On the snapshot left is the barrel manufacturer Lothar Walther, right his brother George. The Cartel Championships in pistol shooting in 1935 in Zella-Milas. Here, too, are the Walther brothers. This medal is for the participants, naturally with PPK on the front. The back of the Thuringian shooting range in Zella-Milas after completion in 1939. The SV Schützen Club 1891, a shooting club as it looks today. The marksman tradition undergoes a renaissance after German reunification. Well preserved are the historic shooting grounds of the former Thuringian range. In 1936, the Zella-Milas Market Square is renamed Karl Walther Square. After this honor by the town fathers, it soon becomes obvious that Germany's fate is sealed. After Hitler seizes power, there is a growing need by paramilitary associations for a precise training weapon, which in design conforms to the 98K carbine. With the cooperation of the Ministry of National Defense, the German Sport Model 34 in caliber 22 comes into existence. This is a single-shot small-bore rifle with cylinder lock, double-pull trigger, curved sight, and V-notch rear sight, triangular front sight, and full-length stock with hand protection. This rifle is produced by all renowned arms manufacturers after they have obtained the contractually guarded license from the Mauser firm. In particular, the Hitler Youth groups are trained with this gun. In 1938, the new small-caliber military sports model comes out. All in all, 5 arms manufacturers receive a license for it. This training weapon resembles the Mauser carbine more than its predecessor. It has been developed jointly by the Gustloff firm in Weimar and by Mauser in Oberndorf. The loading tray is constructed by Walther. Next comes the P-38. In 1923, Walther is again experimenting with the caliber 9mm pistol so as to come out with a successor to the Luger. The result is this pistol with toggle action, invented by Hiram Maxim and further developed by Hugo Borchardt for small arms. The prototype, optically strongly resembling a Luger, already has a double magazine with 16 shots. There are said to be only 2 of this pistol model in existence. One is in the Dr. Sturgis collection. The Reichswehr II is looking for a new weapon, but the real development only starts with the MP-PP. The MP standing for Militärpistole. This model with the serial number 5008 is the personal pistol of Fritz Walther, which in 1945 was confiscated by the U.S. Army. It comes from the Dr. Sturgis collection. The MP-PP in 9mm caliber Steyr is designed for a Luger shoulder stock. This make is the enlarged version of the PP in 9mm Parabellum with an unbolted blowback action. but this functional principle does not go down well with the Reichswehr. The second make is called AP for Armeepistole. This version has a 12-centimeter barrel and the serial number 28, the magazine number 56. A single large bolt does the locking. The safety mechanism stems from the PP. The weapon can be disassembled with a lever at the grip. It has a changed trigger system, and the slide has a bridge in its front part. The AP barrel lengths range between 10 and 18 centimeters. Here is an 18-centimeter version in a detachable stock with shoulder strap and the serial number 10. This weapon has a light metal grip, which is used in testing new materials. The mounting device at the detachable stock turns out to be too weak. In the mid-1930s, the MP is developed in light metal. It has more the look of an AP. The last but one gun to evolve is the HP for Heerespistole. This weapon has an externally located hammer and also optically is now identical with the P38 to come. Here is an HP of caliber 765, a civilian version. This is an HP with disc butt plates, also of 765 caliber. With this model, only one shot at a time can be fired. Another Walther HP, a 765 with hammer and trigger cocking. All three firearms are in the original cases and boxes. These variations again exemplify the zest the firm has for finding new ways by experimenting.
Let's look.
The P38 specialist is Warren H. Buxton of New Mexico. At the end of the 1970s, he wrote 3 books on these weapons. Here to be seen in front of the Modenbach collection. What is the story behind this legendary P38 design?
Well, the basic design of the P38 was extremely advanced for its time. The idea was to produce an all-steel pistol that was very lightweight, that was very reliable as compared to the early Parabellum or Luger pistol, and like I said, cheap to produce, and used much less material and much less strategic material than was the Luger pistol. It also was one of the ideas was to incorporate the latest philosophy with respect to the trigger mechanism, that is, adopt the revolver trigger mechanism, the double action as we now call it, into an automatic pistol, which was new for a military pistol at the time. And then the other major idea behind it was, from a military point of view, was to have a pistol that was completely safe in the hands of the troops. That is, the safety was such that the average trooper didn't have to do a lot of thinking about whether the gun was on-safe or on-safe. On-safe or off-safe. The gun would do the thinking for him. And Walther achieved all those goals with the P38, with the possible exception of making the gun cost-effective with respect to military mass production. But other than that, it was a huge success from those viewpoints.
This P38 pistol, a pre-serial model, has only the legend P38 on its slide. In addition, it has untypical checkered butt plates. This P38 of the first series has the classical lengthwise ribbed butt plates. These butt plates already identify a Walther P38. The design has become the pistol's trademark.
He started to produce by hand, mostly. He had no production facilities. The first of the military P38s, and these were what we call the 0 series, mainly because the 0 is the serial number, like this is number 927, is prefixed with a 0 in the Walther factory in those days, as it does now. It indicates a gun that is not standard. It's either a prototype, it's a test series or something. And here you see the Walther banner, the P38, and the 0 series number on the slide, but the military guns had the number on the slide, the frame, and then on the front of the barrel up here, mostly. Later on, and they also had military inspection marks here. Well, there's military inspection marks all over the place, but these are the 3 most obvious that you would see if you were just looking at the gun. This little mark here is the same thing as we saw on the other side.
Walther receives the first military code with the number 480. The banner is now omitted.
They went then to what we now call a standard P38, and that's what you see here. The safety system was changed. If you notice now, if we take the magazine slightly out, pull the slide back, now the hammer stays back all the time. They changed this to the point where They thought, well, with training, we can tell the trooper to always, and I'm not going to do it with this gun because it's too nice a gun, but if you pull the safe lever down, that automatically drops the hammer. Now again, although that was taken from these early guns, that was still revolutionary. This is the first pistol, military pistol at least, and I think the first pistol, automatic pistol period, that had what we now call the hammer dropping feature. Before, all safeties on automatic pistols just locked the hammer back. Then they went to the military method of marking, and this is the AC-41. Again, the P-38 was on the slide to show the model number, and then the AC over 41, 1941, of course, is for the year of manufacture. They had AC-42s, AC-43s, 44s, and 45s. And then the serial number started out, it was various places on the slide, but it started out here, and it was on the frame, and of course on the barrel, and on some small internal parts, and sometimes on the magazine, but that was quickly dropped later on. And also you might notice they changed the grips to different kind of plastic, to these groove grips, which became a trademark of the P-38 world over. People recognize these grips faster than probably any other part of the gun.
An early AC code assigned to Walther in 1940. From November on, the year of production is added.
But anyway, Mauser, at the military's order, started making P-38s, and this is a gun here. This is the first of the Mauser guns, a BYF. That was a code for Mauser for 1942, with the dull blue finish that was sort of in between this high gloss and this phosphate that we just discussed. Mauser was very successful. They had trouble getting them online, but that was the normal thing about getting a new product online. Once they got them online, they made them clear up into 1945, right up to almost the last day before they had to shut down. They were very, very well made. In fact, the late war Mausers are probably, some people think, a little bit better than the late war Walthers, but that's a moot point.
Here is an extremely rare P-38 short in the Dr. Sturgis collection. The weapon with the Mauser code is burnished and apparently from the first production series in April 1944. The front sight is on the stump barrel and not on the bridge.
And they came up late in the war, Walther and Mauser at about the same time, for not just the P-38, but with all German military guns. Same thing was happening with U.S. military, etc. They were going to what we call a phosphate. In the U.S. military, it's called Parkerizing, but it's a cheap finish to put on and went on very quickly, and it was very durable. And this is an excellent example, this particular gun, to give you an idea of the convolutions in these things. This slide was made by Fabrique Nationale while it was under German occupation, but it was assembled by Mauser, and this gun is technically a Mauser gun, but it's, and the finish was probably put on by Mauser. They were using this kind of greenish phosphate. But you can see that they weren't all complete here in their changeover. This is a blue barrel, dull blue barrel, with the phosphate finish. Now, one of the things about Fabrique Nationale, if you notice there's an AC over 44. It does not necessarily mean that that means it was Walther made. These were first being made with the thought of sending the slides to Walther for assembly. In other words, FN was going to act as a subcontractor to Walther. But because of the various war situation, the D-Day invasion in June 6th, it kind of messed up those plans, so they had to send them anywhere they could, and most of these slides ended up at Mauser. But you can see again the military-style serial number, the placement of the code, the AC-44, and again the military number down here, and then the inspection marks over here. And these black grips, they came in all colors. Some are red, some are the brown that we just saw, and these are completely black. It has no real significance other than to a collector or a historian. Now, on the Mauser guns themselves, they started out, they never had a high gloss blue since they were always military. Mauser never made a commercial gun. Now, again, Mauser marked them the same way with the BYF over 44, the P-38, and the military-style serial numbering. No difference really from the Walther guns, right up through 1945. Now, this changed to BYF 43, then to BYF 44, and then in the latter part, in about, I think it was December 12 or 13, this code was changed to SVW, which we'll see in a minute, and then it became SVW 45. Again, this is a dull military blue that was adopted and used by all manufacturers in about late 1942.
A late model from the year 1944. The slide was made by FN and the rest perhaps by Walther.
The third manufacturer in the war model guns was Spreewerke, and actually they're You can't tell them apart unless you get very close to see the CYQ is the code for the Spreewerke guns. They made some of the crudest of the German military guns, but they still worked, and that's part of those long legs. They could be made very crude, and the gun would still work very well. Spreewerke also found out they could do away with a lot of the hardening of the major parts of the gun, and it would still work quite well for a military weapon, especially in emergency conditions. The Spreewerke guns was a little bit different in the way they were marked. In fact, Spreewerke did everything a little bit different. They never dated their guns, and that's been a big mystery because this was to date their guns was a military requirement. And what gave Spreewerke permission not to date them has never been found. It had to be written down somewhere. They sure couldn't do something like this on their own and not get called up for it. But their code was CYQ to start with, and then went to CVQ later on, and their numbering was the same as with Mauser and Walther, except you notice this gun has a 0, it says a 0 series, has a U on the frame, meaning that this frame has not had the proper heat treatment, but it still works fine, at least for a military gun for short term. Some of them will have the U on the slide, which you can't see here, but it will be in this area somewhere, indicating that the slide was not given a complete hardening step to speed up production. But it's still, for the 200 or 300 rounds that a soldier would probably shoot before he had to give up the gun for one reason or another, then it would work fine. So Spreewerke is a little bit different in that respect. Again, Spreewerke, it's not certain at this point, but introduced a new style of hammer spur. We call it in the collecting circles a cog hammer because it looks like a big cog wheel or something. Just gave the soldier a better grip on his thumb. But other than this is a very nice Spreewerke pistol. This is a 0 series, and we're not sure where or why they were made. But some of the Spreewerkes were superbly made. The early ones were very well made. But again, like I mentioned before, the Spreewerke has a reputation for being the crudest of the P-38s, but they all work pretty good. In late 1944, from about, actually mid-1944 really, the German military realized that they had a problem with the P-38 or a continuing problem in the cost of production and the use of strategic material, which was high-quality steel. The production was taking too long, which drove up the cost and reduced the number of pistols. It seems like in probably late 44, early 45, they made a couple of design changes in the production steps to see if they couldn't reduce the cost of the pistol without dropping the pistol from the line altogether and bringing a new pistol on the line like a sheet metal gun. And one of the first things they did, they modified this slide. You can see it sort of has a dish in here, and if you're used to looking at the P-38 with its full-length slide here, with its full top, this looks rather strange with this dished out area. But one of the most complex parts of the machining of the P-38 is in this slide here where they have to machine out the area for the trigger, for the firing pin mechanism and the safety mechanism. So they took a slide that was not yet finished, it's still in the forging, and instead of putting the complex top cover, we haven't discussed that, but just assume there's a top spring-loaded cover on this in a standard P-38, and they eliminated that. They eliminated most of the internal mechanism and just left the thing solid across here. And this was, I think, dished out. Instead of leaving it all the way across, it was probably dished out to lighten the slide so they would assure that it would work okay with that heavier slide with the more metal in there. The rear side is just held in by a simple pin. The safety mechanism still works like it did before, but only 1 or 2 of these guns are known, and they're very, very odd. They obviously weren't successful because no more was made. One other was made, I know, that had, this was not dished out. It was just left solid across here, so it had a solid round top. We don't know whether that was made that way or it just was left before they dished it out. But it's suspected they were also experimenting with that solid top to just see if they could get away with making a pistol that way, but apparently it didn't reduce cost enough, didn't reduce the material used enough, so only a few were made, and this is about the only one known, and only one of the solid tops are known. One of the more interesting developments in this whole line here was a again, this phosphate finish is a little darker and things, but after the war, the Mauser plant fell into the French zone of the now separated Germany, and the French, who needed weapons bad at that time, produced the P-38 for their own military services into 1946, and this is one of the French guns here. You notice it has steel grips, very distinct. These are German grips, actually. They were designed in Germany, and they were supposed to go into production in about November of '44, but they never really made it. But sheet steel grips, so it's an all-metal gun. Nothing unusual about the gun other than for the French, they proof mark the gun, and the internal parts will sometimes carry the little star mark also. Some people think that was Russian, but then later on, as time wore on, we found documentation saying otherwise.
The Schilling Forge in Sewell. In 1940, Gerhard Schilling, during his apprenticeship, worked for 1 year in the Walther firm as a trainee.
Ja, zur Firma Walther, das war eine sehr...
Yes, we had quite a close relationship to the Walther firm.
Allein aus verwandtschaftlichen Gründen heraus.
One reason was our family kinship.
Aber es, wie gesagt, wir waren auch vom Ort her gesehen nah am
Another was that we were located quite near to Zella Miles, which was a good starting position for negotiations, conferences, and so on.
Betrifft Verhandlungen, Besprechungen und so weiter. Und es wurden eben schon vor dem Krieg...
Even before the Second World War, we were already making handgun parts for the Walther people.
Von Sportwaffen über
From sport weapons to pistols like PP and PPK.
PP, PPK und die aber, wie gesagt,
This expanded naturally with the beginning of the Second World War, when there was an extensive production of machine gun parts. Perhaps about 80% of our forge output was for the Walther company. In fact, it was even anticipated that Walther would take over our business. Yet that didn't happen. This photo shows the Walther work shortly before the start of the Second World War. After the First World War, Walther took calculating machines into its program. Sample models were exhibited at the Leipzig Fair in 1938. 3 years earlier, the firm's bus, the Blue Wonder, goes into service. Employees' outings foster a friendly working climate. As this building application shows, the Walther factory keeps on expanding. In 1938, Walther acquires a former paper factory in the town of Wassingen. In the firm's internal language, the company becomes Plant 3 or Plant C. The finishing rooms in Zella are Plant 2 and the main factory Plant 1. One of the few photos of the Walther apprentice workshop. Military orders and brisk demand for sports pistols bring soaring sales figures. In May 1938, for the first time, Walther wins a regional diploma for outstanding performance. Fritz Walther receiving the diploma. The Walther Weapons Factory receives what in Nazi ideology amounts to a title of nobility. In 1939, the designation as National Socialist Model Factory. Here are photos from the house organ titled Über Kimmer und Korn. In 1943, Walther is designated as a model war production firm. 2 years earlier, Walther had already been named National Socialist Model Factory for the second time. During the war, the Model 8 also gathers new honors. Officers, on their own, like to wear it as a handy sidearm. Even though it is only of .635 caliber, this make is produced until 1943. The Wehrmacht requires above all rapid-firing weapons. Weapons historian Wolfgang Seal has concerned himself for years with these products.
Walther hat sich im Rahmen der allgemeinen
The Walther people had to move within the frame of general weapons technique. Hitler had the idea that for infantry purposes, the right weapon was the carbine and not an automatic weapon. Naturally, it was clear why the armed forces were demanding an automatically firing, a fast-firing, high-powered weapon. They needed it because the Soviet Union was very well equipped when it came to infantry weapons. The Soviet soldiers had automatic weapons from early on. The Soviet forces, to a large extent, were supplied with machine pistols, relatively simple models that were turned out in large numbers. The Wehrmacht had to counter this situation if the German forces were not to accept territorial losses. What the troops wanted was clear. They demanded that the authorities, the German Military Weapons Office, provide them with an automatically shooting, a fast-firing weapon with a high magazine capacity. The military's fear that this would mean squandering of munitions did not materialize. For the soldier had a quite high firing discipline. He didn't waste ammunition. He fired only where the combat situation required him to fire. And the first experiences with the Scherer combat group actually demonstrated that automatic weapons could have turned the tides of war if such arms had been employed in sufficient numbers early on. But only in the autumn of 1944 was the assault rifle available in its final version, not, however, in large numbers. But by then the war was already decided. In any event, after Stalingrad, there was no possibility of changing the outcome any longer. Dr. Sturgis on his own rifle range with the G41. Above the early make, below Walther's production model of 1943, at bottom the Mauser model. Already in 1936, the armed forces test a Walther self-loading firearm, a competition of a Mauser model. At first, the military offices show little interest in this semi-automatic weapon. Only in 1940 are the Walther and Mauser firms asked again to demonstrate experimental weapons to the military. The G41W, the W standing for Walther, wins out over the G41M, the M standing for Mauser. The firearm is officially introduced at the end of 1942. The early G41 model has a push button for magazine release. The early and later makes have a rail for mounting a telescope. Here is the Mauser competing model, G41M. While the Walther and Mauser makes are being tested in small quantities in the field, Hitler gives the order to attack the Soviet Union. As the son of Fritz Walther, Gerhard is the last living director of the Walther firm. He and his wife Irmgard have witnessed the most varied developments, not least those with the G43 firearm.
When
my father came home, he said, "The war is lost. Around Hitler are only," what he said was, ass-kissers. Yes, something like that. And I'm amazed that Zauker, the Nazi leader of Thuringia, whom he always called Sauker, has an influence there. That really disappoints me. That means my father was disappointed, although his weapon was accepted. The G43 being tested. With the G41, no burst of fire can be given. Here, however, it can be. It's a gas-operated gun with a device for continuous firing. 3 varieties of the weapon. In February 1943, the G43 is officially introduced. In 1944, in its improved form, it is renamed Carbine, thus K43, the standard version of the K43 with telescope 4. With that device, it is the ideal sharpshooting firearm for a precise single shot. The standard version with grenade sleeve and rifle grenade. Also shown the cartridge which propels the grenade. The conversion from G41 to K43 production is easily possible, but because of its powerful infantry cartridges, the weapon can hardly be kept on target during a burst of fire, and thus falls short of the demand for an automatic weapon with a high rate of fire. This is the same model with an experimental Zeiss RLN telescope. The K43 is now intended to serve as an additional firearm alongside the .98 carbine as the main weapon. In this version, an experimental 20-shot magazine is used. But already during the course of 1940, Walther begins developing a machine carbine and sheet pressing technique. In March 1942, the firm comes up with the first model of the MKB-42W. It is a fully automatic weapon. The self-loading rifles have only been transitional weapons. Up to August 1942, Walther is asked to produce 200 prototypes for testing. The Haenel firm in the nearby town of Sewell also brings out a machine carbine, above the Haenel model MKB-42H, below the Walther counterpart. The Haenel weapon is somewhat shorter. Its gas system is located above the barrel. With the Walther model, it is around the barrel. In December 1942, the Haenel version wins in a comparison test shooting, but its hammerlock stems from the Walther prototype. Early in 1943, the name will be changed to Machine Pistol 43. In October 1944, the Machine Pistol 44 is introduced, and after various development stages, gets the additional suggestive name Sturmgewehr 44, Assault Weapon 44. Shortly before the end of the war, weapons and raw materials become almost non-existent. For the so-called Volkssturm, simple primitive weapons are needed. In December 1944, a test shooting takes place. Walther builds the Volksgewehr VG-1, for other firms the types 2 to 5. The People's Rifle has the magazine of the Sturmgewehr, but reduced to 10 cartridges. Since the MP with concealed hammer was introduced, Fritz Walther has been working on sheet pistols. Now these weapons are to be made for the German armed forces. A P-38 version with sheet slide is followed by this pistol, which meanwhile has become one of the greatest rarities. It is of 9mm caliber and has a double-action trigger plus a forged grip. A rotary action serves as a locking system. The magazine stems from the P-38. From 1943 on, work in this area is intensified. The requirements are that the pistols be dependable and, in particular, inexpensive. The aforesaid weapon is rejected by the military. It is succeeded by the Sheet 2, as collectors call it today. In it, the milled parts have been markedly reduced, but this Model 2 is not accepted by the authorities. It is amazing that even now, during wartime and under enormous time pressure, the Walther firm goes ahead with new developments. The Sheet 3 brings this phase of pistol development to its conclusion. The model here is made entirely of sheet metal, except for the bolt head and the barrel. This 9mm parabellum, which externally calls to mind a Colt 1911A1, is introduced in November-December as a P-38 substitute for the armed forces. Up to then, it is the largest Walther self-loading pistol. The sheet steel pistol is an unbolted recoil-operated gun. The magazine holds 8 cartridges. On December 1, 1944, the Central Committee on Weapons gives Walther the order to deliver 20,000 of these sheet pistols to the Volkssturm. The order has first priority. The demand proves, however, impossible to fulfill. Thus today there exist only a few keenly sought-after prototypes of the Sheet 3. He is considered the world's leading collector and expert on weapons. Dr. Sturgis in England. His famed collection, shown here on film for the first time, features among its other pieces these 3 legendary sheet pistols.
In 1940, despite the generally favorable war position as far as the German army was concerned, a special commission for infantry weapons was set up to investigate and implement the use of pressed steel, Blechprägertechnik, for future weapons developments, to minimize the use of expensive raw materials, to simplify manufacture, and to easily increase production capacity and speed up weapons manufacture. This looked at and implemented manufacture of weapons such as the MG42 machine gun and the Sturmgewehr series of assault rifles, which were then beginning development. By 1943, however, mid to late 1943, the war situation had deteriorated and there were material shortages, particularly in alloy steels, and lack of production capacity for the production of pistols was becoming apparent. And therefore a program was set up with requirements for simplified manufacture of pocket pistols and military pistols in 9mm caliber for the army, and also other weapons required for various other agencies in Germany. The directives that guided this, this work were to minimize the use of forging and milling, which are the most labor-intensive and machine tool-intensive operations in the production of weapons, and to use simplified techniques, preferably with chipless production, as it was termed, i.e. pressing, stamping, rather than cutting by either milling or turning. The requirements for pocket pistols produced 2 or 3 entrants for the competition that was held, notably a pistol which had been developed by the Gustloff-Werke, and this was rejected because, although a simple design and a good design, it incorporated a fully machined grip, although it did have a pressed metal slide. Gustloff simplified this pistol even further with another version which used a zinc alloy grip with steel inserts, and again a press slide. The slide's a very simple component, but it was not held to be robust enough and was discontinued. Mauserwerk were also involved in this program, and they produced a version of the HSC, the well-known service pistol, which also, like the Gustloff pistol, had a press slide. The rest of the pistol is conventional machining. It's a standard HSC grip frame, but the slide is a press component, very simple, cheap and easy to produce, but the amount of machining in the grip ruled it out of contention. As far as the full-size military pistols, lock-breech pistols with 9mm were concerned, Mauser had on the stocks, as it were, a pistol called the Gerät 40, which was the development of the pre-war HSV pistol, which was submitted originally against the P-38 in the design competition that led to the adoption of the P-38 for the German army. Mauser developed this further and adapted it to pressed steel manufacture and submitted that as their contender. Walther proceeded, however, with the manufacture of a hybrid pistol, which has got a pressed steel frame and pressed steel lockwork. It has a machined central part of the grip, which contains the locking mechanism. It has a machined slide, and it is locked breech using a rotary action very similar to the 1912 Steyr-Hahn pistol. Again, the amount of machining in this is still fairly extensive. The slide is assembled by welding and by pinning with a minimum of machining, but it is still a hybrid pistol. More than one version of this were produced. The interior lock parts here are quite different to the P-38. They're not really based upon it, but they are entirely made of pressings. The whole of this grip area is, in fact, a rather complex pressing. The rotary lug here, which you can see, the angled cam, is virtually identical to that of the Steyr-Hahn, and matching it in the grip, there is the angled cut in the forged part of the grip, which causes the unlocking rotation to occur. The barrel itself is a very simple turn part with a minimum of machining, but incorporating 3 substantial locking lugs, which engage in cuts in the slide itself. But the slide is a fairly complex part made by traditional milling and turning procedures. A second version of this pistol is here, which may in fact be slightly earlier. It's difficult to know the exact chronology of these pistols. It's a very similar action with a rotary barrel. The turning can be seen there just at the point of unlocking. It does have a much heavier barrel. The whole weight of the pistol is larger than the previous one. This is dictated by the internal locking mechanism, but otherwise the function of the pistol is identical to the first one. stripping is fairly simple. The barrel here has a more complex cam arrangement, and the simplification in the first pistol that was shown, I think, is evident from these components. The internal parts of the slide, again, although it's difficult to see, are riveted and welded rather than being machined into solid metal. The rear part of the slide is a conventional machining, however. However, even the stay for the spring is a pressing. It is not a solid machine turn part, it's actually pressed out of a piece of thin wall tubing. The grip construction is very similar to the first pistol. These pistols were ready and manufactured and demonstrated to the German Army and High Command in April 1944 or thereabouts. Various research reports record the trials that they were submitted to at that time. Development proceeded with a view to further simplification. However, by mid-1944, about August, the war situation, raw material situation, had declined even further, and it was evident that a sophisticated lock breech pistol of these types as a replacement for the P-38 would not be viable. Even greater simplification, even less use of any type of critical raw material would be essential, and therefore instructions were given for industry to develop even further simplified versions of these pistols. This resulted in Mauser developing a Volkspistole, as the program had now become known, which was a straightforward blowback, but this didn't work very well. Gussloffwerk produced a pistol which was gas retarded, a most interesting pistol of which no example is known to survive, and a principle which Mauser in fact adopted later. Walther built upon the work they'd done in 1943 and produced this pistol, which is the final version of the Walther sheet steel pistol, which is entirely made of sheet pressings, apart from one or two critical parts which are machined from the solid, such as the barrel. The hammer is a forging. Part of the slide is a very simple machining. The rest of it is entirely of pressed steel. It's a quite remarkable development, one of the peaks in German wartime development of sheet pressing technology for weapons. Considering that only a mere handful of these pistols were produced, the quality of the press work is quite remarkable. The pistol is straight blowback. It does not have a turning barrel. Although the barrel looks very similar to the earlier pistols, it in fact is not a rotating type at all. The stripping is extremely simple. Pressing a latch allows the barrel to be withdrawn. The barrel, as can be seen, is an extremely simple turn part with an absolute minimum of milling and other machining applied to it. The slide is a sandwich construction of pressings with a single milled piece of bar. It's not a forging, but simply a piece of bar stock which has been milled to make the central part of the breech block, which is retained simply by cam lugs. The two parts of the slide are held together by spot welding, and it's a very fine example of the technology. The grip frame itself is virtually identical to the earlier pistols from 1943. It's entirely a press construction, however. The central forging, which the earlier pistols used to contain the angled rotating cam for the barrel, the unlocking cam, has disappeared. There's a very simple block of steel here. Only this part is solid, and that is not a forging. It's simply a piece, again, of bar stock which has been machined, which contains the locking cam, the peg which rises into the barrel and locks it together. All of the rest, the relief slides, all the internal parts, all the parts of the trigger mechanism, which has been simplified, although it's still a double action pistol, are entirely made of press work. I consider this to be one of the finest examples of press steel technology, and a tribute to the people who designed it in such a short time during the war. I think that's about all I can tell you about the pistols for the moment. Unfortunately, very, very few of these pistols have survived the war. One or two other examples are known in collections, but they're not available today.
Incidentally, this weapon is also a first-rate firearm. A further important development is the Walther firm's flare pistols program. Wolfgang Kern is the flare pistol expert. Here he visits the Dr. Baumgarten collection.
As long
as there have been people, they have felt the need to send signals to each other, to transmit smoke signals, whether in military situations or in emergencies, on the sea or in the desert. Think of all the Wild West films with the Indian smoke signals. That reveals a clue about the origin of these signal tools. The first signal devices came from America. Here we have a veteran from the year 1861. Or this item here. But this kind one can only call a firing device since it was not yet propelled by regular ammunition. Here one put an incendiary charge in, and that was then ignited. The device couldn't be used to fire cartridge ammunition. Germany had similar early signaling devices. This one is the mailman model. As you see, here is a kind of pan. A fire is set in the pan, and so to speak, optical signals are burned off. The technique of signaling was revolutionized by a U.S. naval officer, Edward Wilson Very, for whom this model is named. He, for the first time in 1880 or 1881, developed and used actual cartridges for firing with this device. Handily, one could directly unload the fired cartridge by introducing a new one, the famed Very system giving its name to such signal devices. This approach was taken up in Germany around 1894. Versions of the U.S. model were found with German troops. Among collectors, they are known as lever models. Lever because it can be opened here. Somewhat difficult after having unbolted this underlever. A hexagon barrel, the modern device of a cartridge ejection, external hammer. That existed from quite a few manufacturers. As a consequence, the parts were not interchangeable. They were all very different, not uniform. And at exactly this stage in 1926, the Walther firm's activity gets underway. Walther's introduction of this model caused a revolution. Optically, it is very much like the German lever make of the First World War. But only optically. For on close examination, you recall the difficulty I just had in opening the pistol. Here, pulling back a lever suffices for the weapon to open up by spring pressure. In other words, a remarkable improvement in ease of handling. Otherwise, we see the characteristics of the lever model with this major difference. Here we have, except for the butt screw, no more screws. Under this patent, all the parts are either holding each other mutually firmly in place or are fastened with bolts and cotters. All of the parts are fully exchangeable with each other. Here was an absolute breakthrough in this area. For the time, a highly modern, innovative pistol. In the course of time, Walther modified this pistol in line with the needs of the troops. Here we see it in a shortened version, which of course is handier. Then there was a change in the construction material from heavy steel to light aluminium. Here the course of the war is reflected. Raw material is being saved everywhere. The hammer is narrower. With metal now scarce, this part is no longer milled but pressed from sheet metal. Compared with the original model, the butt plates become narrower than in the original. Everywhere there is strong emphasis on saving material. And finally, the material itself is saved. These aluminium models are replaced by a version in zinc. The aluminium is needed for airplanes. The high point of the line of Walther's flare pistols is the introduction of the combat pistol Z, recognizable by the fluorescent Z. The Z stands for Züge, in English, rifling. The weapon is like a flare pistol except for its rifled barrel. From it, tank-breaking ammunition is shot when the weapon is mounted in an appropriate shooting rack, namely a shoulder stock. With sighting, the weapon looks as shown here with a hollow charge projectile.
Ja, das wäre so das Wesentliche zu Walther, zum Heeresmodell zu sagen.
The absolute acme of Walther's flare pistol production was the introduction of the so-called star signal pistols, or SL models for short. They were especially developed for naval purposes. Collectors like this flare signal pistol for its aesthetically pleasing look. And as can be seen here, it has also recycled the traditional underlever mechanism, nearly identical as in these models. But different from the other versions, this model is made completely of non-corroding high-grade steel, a feature that makes the pistols seawater resistant. The double-barreled weapon, the absolute queen of Walther's flare pistols, also known as SLD, the D for double-barreled, was designed for submarines. Here too, as shortages of materials worsen, models come out technically still identical with the others, but of aluminum. Doubtlessly, collectors prefer the earlier versions in high-grade steel. The lever model of 1894. The underlevel locking mechanism is typical, with the lever smooth and not ribbed. This German soldier of the First World War carries the lever flare pistol. The long-barreled Walther in use. The Walther Armed Forces model in 1934 with 232mm barrel. The patent designation with the spring in the grip. The lever under the trigger is ribbed for a better hold. All parts hold each other mutually firmly in place. The caliber stamp of 4 in a circle. The version with a 155mm barrel. The broad thumb rest. Here is a weapon that has never been fired in the original carton with the extremely rare operating instructions. The burnishing is deep blue, from the Dr. Sturgis collection. The Walther Armed Forces model from 1936. The Walther banner and the fully written out year are still to be seen here. In the field of flare pistols too, Walther proves what is possible at this time. The Walther War version of the Armed Forces model of 1941 with the AC code, which was introduced in 1940. The thumb rest of the hammer left has become narrower to save material. The loading indicator is still countersunk. When the gun is loaded, the pin protrudes, so the loading status can be determined in the dark by touch. With the Walther Flare Pistol II, there is production under licensing. Here is a military model from Erma of Erfurt in 1936. A licensed production of 1940 from the Berlin Lübeck Machine Works. The difference, the pistol has smooth wooden butt plates. This export model stems from a contract with Denmark, where it was introduced as Model 1940. This weapon is meant for shooting cartridges with irritant agents. Therefore, it has a front sight and a rear sight. In this Walther model, the barrel has simply been shortened. Experiments with this gun were made in Denmark during the 1950s. The military model in zinc. The factory switched to zinc die casting, thereby using free raw material capacities. One economy, making a lanyard ring in the shape of a straight bolt for receiving the carrying ring. The milled round head is eliminated. Surprisingly, this weapon carries the Walther banner and not the AC code. Probably it was put together at the end of the war from leftover parts. Parts of the British No. 1 Mark IV in zinc were taken over from the military model. Mainspring and bar are identical. The locking lever springs are also like those on the Walther Armed Forces model. A true rarity, a box of replacement parts for a flare pistol from the Dr. Baumgarten collection. On 2 levels, all the parts of the flare pistol are on hand in duplicate. A fastening device for attaching the flare pistol to a tree. With the double-link tree screw with claw and levels, one can, for example, fire wind-measuring cartridges vertically. With a firing cord, the weapon can be discharged. The Combat Pistol Z. The fluorescent Z stands for Züge, rifling. This flare pistol has a rifled barrel in order to fire special ammunition. The luminous color helps to avoid mix-ups at night. With the help of the level, the firing angle is set. Tank fighting as well as signal and communication cartridges can be fired. This combat pistol is developed around 1940. Here with the projectile 361, one-piece shoulder rest of the stock and folding sight. Around 1942, the assault pistol with sheet-pressed foldable shoulder stock is introduced. Here a very rare original box with tank projectile and accessories from the Dr. Baumgarten collection. In a teaching film of the German forces, the weapon is called the 42 LP Sturmpistole assault pistol. The DFP code on the tank projectile stands for Gustloff Factory. Here is how a flare pistol can, with the aid of an insert barrel, be turned into an assault pistol. Various types of ammunition can then be fired. This model is not a Walther weapon, but a product of the Berlin-Lübeck machine factory of Bernhard Berghaus, therefore the DUV code. In 1936, the Star Signal Pistol SL appears, made for the Navy from non-corroding high-grade steel. It has a wing safety, loading pin indicator, wooden forearm, and, for signal weapons, a new type of double-action trigger. 3,500 of this model are produced. The wagon wheel stamp, a star in a circle, probably stands for the firm of Hine, a supplier of barrels to Walther. Inspection stamp 4, examination proof, proof fire, and shot proof. In the same year, the double-barreled Star Signal Pistol SLD, the D standing for double-barreled, appears. The correction lever on top of the bolt housing can at choice be positioned for a single shot right or left, or for a simultaneous shot of both barrels in the middle position. The front edge of the wooden forearm serves in both models as protection against hand burns in the muzzle area, in case one reaches too far front or slips with the second hand. At the same time, if there is poor visibility, one can feel the end of the barrel. The construction consists of 78 individual parts. The last models were built in 1944. The weapon has been produced about 4,000 times. Starting in 1941, the year of manufacture is shown in only 2 digits. The acceptance stamp by the Navy is located under the screw of the bolt housing as an M to the left of the eagle. From 1943 on, the letters of the barrel selector are embossed in large size. A light metal version of the SLD. This black, anodized, or only lacquered cheaper version is produced by the Friedrich Wilhelm Heim firm in Suhl. ERMA, or as here, by the Trade Association of West Thuringian Tool and Metalware Factories in Schmalkalden, which has the code EEU. The weapon of duraluminium is some 50% lighter than its Walther counterpart. This make was introduced in 1943 and about 7,000 pistols have been produced. A curiosity in Walther design, a classical metal grip from the Armed Forces model with an insert barrel of 410 caliber. The firearm stems from the British pattern room. On the receiver and the drop barrel is the same number. Perhaps this make was reassembled after the war. There is a choke bore at the breech. During the war, the Walther factory and Zella Milas were not bombed, except for 3 small bombs on the town. On April 4, 1945, the 11th Armored Division, an advance command of the 3rd U.S. Army, surrounded the undamaged city. Irmgard Walther witnessed the event.
Das ging ganz schnell. Wir hörten natürlich schon das
It happened fast. Naturally, we heard the gunfire all around and the Americans came. They sat the mayor on the radiator of their car and asked, "Where are the weapons being made?" And then they came first to our villa and had a brief talk with the father, Fritz Walther. I'm not sure now. Perhaps before they were in the firm, but in any case they came straight away to our house. And they behaved very well, very accommodating. They told us the weapons had to be given up. First they had to see the weapons, and Father showed them everything. And then he presented his favorite guns to these American officers and said, "I will have to part with them anyway. You can take them with you." Then on the next day, we had to load all the guns we had in the house, and there were many, onto a handcart, and then unload it again on the market square. There, everything piled up high. For after all, Zella-Mehlis was a weapons town. Many guns were made here. Then my mother-in-law made a petition to this highest American officer. She could do this in English. My sister was an interpreter, and she could translate everything needed. Next, Mother walked to Meiningen to this very sympathetic Mr. Simpson, who had interrogated Father in Ohrdruf, the concentration camp near Hamburg. It was probably this Mr. Simpson who arranged for the whole Walther clan, yes, he was an American Jew, Mr. Simpson, to be evacuated. We had to leave the houses within hours. They gave us a truck, and we were taken in the direction of Württemberg. The National Archives in Washington. Here the photos of the U.S. Army Signal Corps can be found, documenting the advance of the U.S. Armed Forces, when, after the 3-month occupation period on July 2, 1945, the last American Jeep leaves Zella-Mehlis, there is not a weapon left in the firearms factory. It is through this war booty that the Americans learn of the Walther firm's legendary reputation. Sergeant George Band comes upon the machine carbines 42. They are taken to be Volkssturmwaffen. Many a GI in Germany brings a Walther gun home with him.
I was working on a ranch in Wyoming at the time, and this, of course, in those days there was veterans all over the place. And I remember this fellow out in his front yard shooting this pistol. And of course, I, being a hunter and things, and I had a .45 automatic that I go out and plink with, and I had to go over and see what he's shooting. And here he's shooting this really strange-looking pistol that I'd never heard of before. And he said, "Oh, it's a P-38," and he'd brought it back from the war. And he'd take it out and shoot it every now and then, but he was thinking of getting rid of it because he had no more interest in it. And so I bought it from him for something like $12 or $15. That was a lot of money to a kid that was making just a few dollars a month at a ranch. But that was when I got to looking at this gun, because at that time I had a small collection of Winchesters and percussion Colts and mainly guns that I thought had interesting mechanisms, but it was that darn P-38 that attracted my... Every time I go in to look at the guns and take them apart, I'd be taking that P-38 apart more than any other. I was wondering, how do they figure this out? How do they make it work, and why?
What now follows is the Red Army. It is warmly welcomed by the German communists. The Walther firm is shut down. In early December 1945, the Soviet military administration orders the dismantling of the factory complex. Every machine is taken to Russia. After that, the plant is dynamited, apparently, so that the Soviet Union can counter the Western Allies' accusation that in the Soviet zone of Germany, arms production is proceeding. In Heidenheim on the Brenz in 1946, Fritz and Erich Walther began reconstruction of the sprocket wheel calculating machine in the Pulverhäusle of the Johannes Ehrhardt firm. At the end of 1948, the Walther Company moves to Niederstolzingen, into a massive one-story building. Here, constantly more resettled former employees arrive. Meanwhile, Brother George has taken up residence in nearby Gerstetten and supervises readying the plant for manufacturing calculating machine switches. After lagging sales of the first machines, demand picks up. A year later, the 1,000th unit is turned out. In 1950, the firm is exporting to more than 40 countries. Meanwhile, the former Walther plant has gone over into the possession of the town of Zella-Mehlis. The entire Walther assets are transferred to the property of the people. In Niederstolzingen in September 1951, celebration of a new construction. Alongside the one-story plant, there has arisen a new 3-story building. The program now consists of mechanical hand calculators and electrical balancing machines. In the stables of the barracks complex of the Ulm-Danube Bastion, Fritz Walther is about to produce weapons once more. Air pressure guns are needed by the gradually reviving shooting clubs, and the Allied occupation authorities have not classified these sport devices as weapons. So, with the help of second-hand machines, by December 1950, the first 100 compressed air rifles of Type 51 are manufactured. The re-established German Shooting Association is a grateful purchaser and provides the necessary turnover. To be seen above is the LG-51, Walther's first post-war weapon, About 2 years later, the firm puts up a new building in Ulm. In 1953, the first air pistol model, the LP-53 and caliber 4.5 millimeters, is produced in Ulm. Optically, it resembles the successful Olympics pistol. For cocking the weapon, a kind of wooden ball with inserted metal cone is supplied, which is put on the muzzle. That gives a firmer hold and eases the effort to cope with a trigger pull weight of 8 kilograms, besides reducing the danger of injury. The weapon is in production for 23 years. In the successor model, LP2, the criticized hard rebound of the earlier pistol is eliminated. The weapon can be cocked with the help of a front grip. The LP2 has a refined micrometer sight and a trigger with variable adjustment. The LP3 model of the air pistol also works with a compression system. New are the exterior barrel profile and the adjustable support for the side of the hand on the grip of the LP3 match. A return to manufacturing live arms is not possible at this time because of regulations from the authorities. So Fritz Walther decides to have them made outside Germany. In 1952, the Walther firm concludes a contract with the Swiss firm of Hemmerle AG in Lenzburg to manufacture the Olympic sports pistol under a license. The standard 22 caliber long version appears in April and the fast-firing make in 22 short in July. There are 4 different models with 2 barrel lengths and also a triple-slit muzzle brake. At the Olympic Games in 1956 in Melbourne, the gold and silver medals are won with these weapons. The model here is a Christmas gift in its box with accessories. Paralleling the contract with the Swiss firm, Fritz Walther also concludes a license agreement with the French manufacturer Manorin of Mühlhausen in Alsace. The Manorin firm makes the PP, PPK, and PP Sport in 22 caliber. From 1956 on, Walther also turns out the PP Sport, although without double-action trigger on its own. Here are 3 variations. The Walther make with a 150 millimeter barrel. Before the first shot, the weapon's hammer must be cocked with the thumb. Therefore, the easy-to-grasp hammer spur instead of the ring as in the Manorin model. The Walther export model with 190 millimeter barrel and the inscription Mark II. The Manorin make with 210 millimeter barrel. The striking piece has a ring and no hammer spur. In 1955, the Walther firm's program is broadened with the gas and blank cartridge pistol UP1. The patent is issued 3 years later. The multiple-shot weapon not only shoots blank cartridges, but also with different cartridges, gas or flare ammunition, which is transported from the magazine by cocking the double-action trigger. Soon afterwards comes the model UP2. A pocket pistol is again introduced, the TP. It comes either as .635 caliber or .22 long. It is in demand as an auxiliary defense weapon. 6 years later, the pocket pistol with hammer, TPH for short, is turned out. Below the early make of the TP, above the first version of the TPH. The trigger can be pulled through, and the slide, contrary to that on the TP, is now enclosed. Left the TPH with visible hammer, right the TP without hammer because of the striker lock. In the 1950s, Walther produces the P38 SD. The SD stands for Schalldämpfer, or silencer. This make is, however, a model from the Spreewerke firm, with the obligatory hammer, the Spreewerke code, and the stamp of the Military Weapons Office. The gun itself and the silencer are numbered identically. In 1950, some 10 of this model are turned out by the British firm of Cogswell and Harrison and assembled by the British firm of Parker Hale. Although they were intended for Saudi Arabia, they never arrived there. The Bundeswehr now changes to the P1. Here at a NATO shooting competition in 1959.
Walther then, in the early 1950s, started to design a new P38. This gun here, which eventually came out of that, was in external appearance was exactly like the war model guns, except for one major difference. It has a lightweight alloy frame, same as the Model HP, which was made back in the 1930s. But now they had got the material, the alloy material, to the point where it would work quite well with a pistol. And once again, Walther was right in the forefront with this frame. This was one of the first, if not the first, military handgun to be adopted by a major power with an alloy frame. The whole world was watching this because most military wanted to go to lightweight weapons for obvious reasons. Things were getting heavier, more ammunition had to be carried, etc. And few people thought this would succeed. But it succeeded very well. It stayed in production into the 1990s. One of the most striking features of it, if you're looking at one of these guns, how do you recognize it from an earlier Walther gun? If you notice a slide inscription says Ohm Donau on it, that indicates the Ohm factory as opposed to the Zähler-Melis. It has the black phosphate finish, which is a type of Parkerizing that we talked about earlier, and of course these nice distinctive black checker plastic grips. And again, this being a military gun, it's sort of unusual. And this one here, if you notice a little crest here, it was used by the state of Hessen, and these are quite scarce. It's not really known just how many they had, but they're an interesting gun to the collector. Again, this gun, though, the only serial number on it is on the frame, as you can see here. Usually there's no serial number on the barrel, possibly inside, and there's not necessarily a serial number on the side. It varies with the police and military guns, but commercial guns just have one serial number mostly. Walther had production facilities and association with the French firm of Monurin, which was located just across the border from Ohm Donau, to manufacture some other of their guns like the PP and PPK, and those guns were manufactured before this plant at Ohm Donau was set up. So Walther went to the Monurin facility and said, why don't we make a series of P-38s and put the French address on them. Typical Walther. The only thing difference when you look at it, you immediately notice everything is in French, and it might be difficult to see, but there's that big cogwheel there, which is the Monurin logo, and then of course it says Monurin across that, and then made in France down below it. And on this being a police gun, there's serial numbers on the slide, frame, and barrel. There's the last 4 digits and the full serial number, and then there's, well, on this one it's on the inside if it's numbered at all, but you know it's a barrel is blank on this. Again, you can't, maybe it might be difficult to see, but there's 2 little proof marks there. Those are the French proof marks that were probably put on in Ulm, but possibly maybe somewhere in France also. Although that request didn't lead directly to this weapon was made, actually the initial request for this, oddly enough, this strange looking little gun, came from West Berlin police and also from police within Germany who had duties that required a lot of riding around in cars, sitting at desks, and possibly plain clothes. They wanted a 9mm parabellum gun with a different kind of safety mechanism that was shorter so it would conceal under a jacket or would ride in a holster without sticking into the seat of a car. It's just a P-38 with the -K designation after it, the Ohm Donau address on it. Same grips, the same frame as a P-38, so the only thing different about this is the top part. And again, if we notice, to give you an idea, you can see the top. Here's the earlier gun that stems from about 1938, and then this is the new style slide that's solid without a cover on it. The main point to note about this is that it had this new style safety mechanism. That was the main change. From all these years since 1938, this was the main change. And actually, that style of safety mechanism was introduced with the PP Super.
Here is an experimental P1 of 1976. Its magazine release is on one side, but the P-38-2 is receiving new honors. The P-38 long with 203mm barrel. The P-38 with 152mm barrel from 1988. Some pistols were made in the limited production series. The barrels vary in lengths from 152 through 178 to 203 millimeters. The shooting precision naturally increases, a feature prized especially by shooting clubs. In 1988, the Walther firm celebrates the 50th anniversary of the existence of the P-38 by issuing a Jubilee model. Meanwhile, the P-4 has been available since 1975.
The next gun was simply the same gun, really, just with a longer barrel. Same safety mechanism. It was called the P-4. And now this gun, for a short period of time in the 1970s, looked like it was going to be the next generation of Walther pistol. Bundeswehr was interested in this. The police purchased several thousand of them at least. Not all police, it was just one major group, I think mostly those associated with Border Patrol and things. And nothing unusual about the gun other than staying P-38K. It says P-4, and it has a slightly longer barrel. The P-38K designation was a Walther factory designation. This was actually a German government designation. There was a P1, obviously we just looked at one, and then a P2, P3, etc. But this was important enough that the German government gave its blessing to some of it. Mostly the serials are on the slide here. Sometimes you'll see them over here, especially for those guns made by export. Some countries require the frame to be serial, some require the slide to be serial, so sometimes Walther just numbers them both and sends them out.
From 1977 on, the P5 and 9mm and 765 Parabellum is produced, a blend of P38 and PP Super with fully enclosed slide. Since 1977, the PP and PPK have been produced again in Ulm. Here is a PPK model, caliber 22 long with silencer. As mentioned previously, Manoram manufactures the two weapons under license. The most famous Walther client is James Bond. The film Daredevil promotes himself from a Beretta to a Walther-made PPK in 1962. In that year's movie Dr. No, 007 uses it for the first time. Later, Her Majesty's secret agent switches his fealty to the P5 and then to the P99. For the PP and PPK models from Ulm, the French counterparts offer no competition, and they soon vanish from the market. As before, non-licensed copies are in circulation. For example, here is a Chinese PPK copy. Even the Walther banner is more than suggested. A Turkish copy of a PP in 9mm short. This weapon from the MKE firm is still in use by the police and the military. Another Chinese copy, a PP in 9mm short from 1996. It has been introduced into Europe by the Norinco firm. The Chinese have altered the design of the trigger. 1973 brings as a new police weapon the PP Super in caliber 9mm Ultra and 9x18 short. This blowback-operated weapon with blowback action and double-action trigger is the further development of the PP. Here in caliber 9mm short, an experimental model with aluminium grip. Slide and grip are marked with a V. The grip angle, hammer, and cocking lever differ from those in the later series model. The series model in 9mm Ultra. Recognizable from the outside is the somewhat more slanting grip compared with that on the experimental model. The two models compared. In 1977, Walther introduces the FP. This so-called free pistol in .22 caliber shares with other arms of this type a falling block action, but the real novelty is the electronic trigger and release mechanism. With a later improved model, the consumption of electricity is considerably reduced. One loading of the battery is enough for firing 1,000 shots within 24 hours. This model too has a unique feature. The falling block action is located underneath the barrel on a cross-axis and in loading is not folded downward. The battery and the main electronic parts are under the forearm. In 1963, Walther puts the first machine pistol of 9mm Parabellum on the market, the MPK and MPL, that is, with short and long barrel. The case is produced by sheet pressing. The stock can be folded and the magazine, with the help of an adapter, is easy to load. The safety system is shrewdly designed. The MP can also be cocked in safe position. An option is to attach a silencer or an optoelectronic aiming device. Police forces have been using this highly dependable firearm for years. The semi-automatic WA-2000 is brought out in 1982 as a police sharpshooting rifle. The WA stands for Walther Automatic. The system is in the buttstock. For that reason, the weapon is foreshortened. It is easy to mount optical sights on this gas-operated gun, which comes in the calibers 300 Winchester Magnum and 308 Winchester. With the help of interchangeable units, the gun can also be operated with the Swiss caliber 7.5mm and the NATO standard cartridges. Its actual predecessor is the JR Sniper. Fritz Walter's son Karl is among the winners of the 1962 Olympics fast-firing pistol competition. In 1965, the firm moves to the Karlstrasse in Ulm. A year later, Fritz Walter dies. Son Karl Heinz takes over leadership of the firm. In the sector of small-caliber weapons, Walther has been back in the field since 1953. Production is underway of the KKS and KKM. The S stands for Standard, the M for Match and Meister. Numerous models come out. The KK Match is modeled after the Meister and Olympics rifles. With this weapon, the gold medal is won at the 1976 Montreal Olympics and again in 1984 in Los Angeles and 1988 in Seoul. The KK UIT models are legendary too. With the UIT moving target, 3 times a world record was made in this discipline. It also was used in winning the 1976 Olympics gold medal in Montreal. From 1952 on, there were also hunting rifles like the hunting repeater JR and later the sniper rifle JR Sniper. Here are the predecessors of the KK200. Above the KK Match, then the UIT Match Universal and the UIT E Universal with electronic trigger. Hunting rifles in 2 calibers, above the JR and below the KKJ. The Airgun Classics, above the LG51, then the LG55, the LGV with breakdown barrel system, and the LGR Match Universal with compression side cocking device. The LGM2 appears in 1993 as successor to the LGM1. It has been completely redesigned. But in the sphere of air pistols too, the Walther firm charts new paths. The CP1 is the first Walther weapon of this kind. The requisite pressure now comes from a carbon dioxide tank horizontally positioned under the barrel. With such refillable cartridges, at least 300 shots are possible. Next comes the CP2. The user himself can select the trigger stop, the trigger slack, the trigger travel, and the trigger pull weight. With this pistol, the gold medal in the 1985 European Masters competition is won. The CP3 is based on the foregoing model, but has a deeper set sighting line. The cartridge capacity is enough for about 350 shots. With the CP5, 5 shots in a row are possible. This repeater sets off the firing electronically. A change of scene. Prince Street in Alexandria, Virginia. Here is Interarms, representing the Walther firm in America. The Carl Walther USA LLC issues licenses for the U.S. market. Among weapons made for U.S. customers are the PPK and TPH. The PPKS has been developed especially for the United States, but more about this later. All these weapons are also available in the material preferred in the USA, stainless steel. The first PPKS made in the USA. In 1978, the licensed manufacture of the PPKS begins. 8 years later, production of the PPK is started, and a year later, the TPH. The manufacturing takes place in the southern state of Alabama. In the city of Gadsden, the firm of Black Creek Incorporated produces an average of 18,000 Walther pistols a year.
The PPK was originally produced in Germany and imported into the United States up until 1968. It is a semi-automatic blowback pistol with a 6-round magazine. In 1968, the U.S. government passed a Gun Control Act, which, by the definition that was laid out in that piece of legislation, we could no longer import the PPK into this country due to the length of the grip relative to the length of the barrel. Walther took a PP frame and a PPK slide-in barrel and mated them and designated it as a PPKS. The PP frame is approximately 1/4 of an inch longer, and it holds 1 additional round. So now you have a 7-round magazine, and now it's importable. So the difference basically between a PPK and a PPKS is the grip is approximately 1/4 of an inch longer on the S, holds 1 additional round. It has a 2-piece grip with a metallic backstrap here. The PPK has a wraparound grip. Presently, we manufacture the PPK in both the stainless and the blue, in both the .380 caliber and also a .32 ACP. The PPK, this is a blue PPK in a .380 caliber, and here we have a stainless PPK also in a .380 caliber. we manufacture the PPKS in a 380 caliber. This is a 32 caliber PPKS, and this is a 380 caliber PPKS. One stainless, one blue. We manufacture also the TPH model, the TPH being the smaller pistol. We manufacture it in both blue and stainless, and we have one of each here. And we do also manufacture it in both the 25 caliber and the 22 long rifle caliber. The frame, it starts out as an investment casting. We take an investment casting which has a lot of the detail precision cast into it. And then we start by grinding the thickness so that we have a location. The next thing that we do to the frame is we put in 2 location holes, one here and one here, we call tooling holes. And everything from that point on is located from these two holes. All the machine work, all the cuts in the frame are done at that point. We grind it. We do this radius along the top, which is the crown for the barrel housing. And then we move to a horizontal machining center, which is a 4-axis CNC controlled machine. And we do all of the machining for the pockets for the internal parts on both sides, both this side and this side, along with the location for the hammer, pivot, and we also do the location for the trigger guard and trigger. From there, we move to another machine, another horizontal machining center, and we locate the part similar to this, and we machine all the features that go in the top, along with the rail locations where the slide mates. And then we put in the barrel bore location where the barrel goes, and we drill and ream that relative to the same hole, so everything is relative. Once we have done that, we then move to the next step in which we install the barrel. We press in the barrel and drill and pin it so that it's a fixed barrel gun. The barrel is not removable, and it facilitates accuracy of the weapon. The weapon is extremely accurate because the barrel is solid. From this point, it then is mated with the slide, become a gun. The slide, we'll go with the slide that goes on the gun first. It starts out as a rectangular bar, solid bar of material. We cut it to length, and then we finish it, grind it to size so that we have a location. Just a plain rectangular bar of material. The next thing we do is then we machine these radii across the top to get the classic configuration of the pistol, and then we machine the bolt face into the slide. Once we have the bolt face located, everything we do to the slide from that point on is located from the ground surface on the bottom and the bolt face inside, because the weapon is based upon that location being correct. So that is, after this, start out with a bar stock, then we go to the slide with the radii and the bolt face. The next thing we do is then we go ahead and do the radii, or the nose radii, and do some of the markings on the side. It's very difficult probably to see those markings, but we put those markings in there, which has the model and the caliber. From that point, we go to a machine. In fact, we go to several machining centers. We use both horizontal and vertical machining centers. We machine the rear configuration, the contour, the thumb safety location for the function of the weapon. We also machine the ejection port and the sight plane, along with the location for the rear sight. Then we go and machine the inside where the small parts of the gun fit, along with where it mates to the frame. There's approximately 25 steps in the manufacturing process from this point to this point.
After milling, the slides are inspected. Then the slide and the grips are ground. This calls for skillful hands and long experience. Finally, the transitions between grip and slide have to be adjusted. The last production process is the assembly and the function test. On the shooting range, somewhat distant from the factory, a demonstration of the weapon's firepower. Another change of scene. Arnsberg in Germany becomes the switchboard of the Walther firm because Umarex is located here. The Umarex firm has been well known for decades with an excellent reputation, particularly for its production of gas-powered and blank cartridge weapons. Umarex is famed for its perfect copies of live firearms, and in 1993, Umarex takes over the Karl Walther GmbH, which is in financial difficulties. The two companies' combined networks of specialist and supplier firms supplement each other, resulting in excellent quality products and innovations. From the development stage onward, the most modern technology is applied. Computers control production, regardless of whether the product is an air rifle, like here the CP-88, or a high-powered weapon. This innovation succeeds. The flagship of the Walther firm is the internationally famed P99. It is still being worked on, and innovations are being tested. Currently, the engineers are developing a P99 version that makes it possible to recognize the user by sensor technique. For example, a microchip on the grip recognizes the owner, and only he can fire the weapon. It sounds like science fiction, but Walther will make it come true. The office in Arnsberg, where the decisions are made and the switch is set for the next century. The man responsible is Wolf-Heinz Flauer, Umarex's chief executive officer. It is he who made the decision for Umarex to take over the Walther firm.
Wir haben schon in den 50er Jahren die Wertigkeit des Walther Namens erkannt.
In the 1950s, the value of the Walther name was already known to us, and at the end of that decade, we were trying for a contract with the Walther company. We said the Walther name ought not only to stand for live firearms, for there is a kind of fraternity of collectors in the world who like to possess Walther firearms. These collector's items include gas weapons, air pressure weapons, and so forth. Umarex tried hard for a license. In the year before we bought the Walther firm, we paid more than 1 million German marks in license fees for making Walther weapons. This wasn't terribly hard for us to do, because the Walther name has such prestige in the world that we could easily make that payment. That raises the question, what the two firms have in common? Perhaps a shared philosophy of business?
Erstens einmal spricht man immer davon, die Umarex ist eine neue Firma.
Yes, it is often said that while the Walther firm has behind it 110 years of existence, Umarex is a new company. This isn't so. As co-proprietor and chief executive officer of the Walther and Umarex firms, I can point to our 5 generations in the weapons branch. Seen that way, it is not so strange that we of Umarex, no newcomers to the branch ourselves, have taken over a 110-year-old enterprise. We are traditional families also at home with this new Walther. And this new alliance was marked in 1996 with the emergence of a new design for the P99.
Wir haben eine Waffe entwickelt, die keinen
We have developed a weapon that has no hammer anymore. The normal traditional weapons have a hammer in the back. It has happened that the gun is dropped, hitting the ground and making the gun go off accidentally. So we have developed a P99 minus a hammer. We weren't the first to do that, but we were the first to produce a gun that is hammerless and also can shoot both single action and double action. That is our worldwide innovation. Back again in the Walther firm's program are hunting knives. The new collection is comprehensive of top quality and high style. And the Walther gas and signal pistols. The palette ranges from the classic models to the new designs and from PPs to 9mm PAK P99s. Hard to distinguish, above the powerful P99, below the 16 cartridges 9mm PAK. Current Walther models, naturally the P99, the 9mm parabellum pistol went into serial production in October 1996. In January 1994, Walther began developing this hammerless pistol. Some 50 models were tested before the gun went into serial production. In this absolutely new development, the makers have entered on entirely new ways, without recourse to time-tested constructions and designs. Since 1987, the P88 and caliber 9mm parabellum has been produced in its current design. The breech technique is based on the Browning system of the drop barrel. The gun is suited for either right or left-handers. The magazine holds 15 cartridges. From the P88 comes the P88 Compact. So it can find its place in the realm of sport, two variations with trigger stop are manufactured. Here, the P88 Champion. At the same time, a new single-action trigger was built in, which can be changed into a double-action trigger by exchanging the trigger bar. The barrel is available in 4, 5, and 6 inches. The P88 Competition has a double-action trigger and is supplied with 4 and 5-inch barrel. The 5-inch one is equipped with a weight or compensator. The trigger travel is 3 millimeters and the trigger weight is adjustable from 1,360 to 1,000 grams by changing the spring tension. Moreover, the striker pin guide is improved. A long spring is replaced by 2 short ones. Since 1987, the somewhat smaller variation of the P5 has been on the market, the P5 Compact with caliber 9mm parabellum. The pistol is designed primarily for police officers who carry their weapon concealed. The plastic grip with checkering provides a non-skidding hold. The phosphate overcoating of the gun is resistant and also suitable for military use. The P38 as a classic is now, as before, part of the Ulm program. It is identical in construction with the P1. Another classic, the PPK, naturally in 765 caliber. The TPH in 635 caliber is now, as ever, much sought after as a second weapon. The Sports Pistol GSP is a further development of the OSP and appeared in 1968. The serially produced trigger is replaced by a new double pull trigger. Here the variation in 22 caliber. Also to be had is the conversion set to caliber 32 S&W long wad cutter, or that caliber in the first place. In 1994, the OSP 2022 short comes on the market. Up to now, the latest version of the Olympic rapid-fire pistol. The butt plate with palm support is ergonomically adjusted to the hand. Exchangeable sets are available in caliber 22 long rifle and S&W long wad cutter. The KK200 PM, the power match weapon in a futuristic design, is produced from 1995 on in caliber 22 long rifle. With this high-tech rifle of light metal, the 1996 World Cup in Atlanta was won. The LG200 works with compressed air and with a full tank can fire around 700 shots. A new type of trigger angle releases a shot extremely dry and fast. A pistol grip is integrated within the stock, and there is a highly precise aperture sight as a dependable aid in hitting the target. The LG210 is the successor of the LGM2 and works with pre-compressed air. The LP200 Power Air has been made since 1995. It represents an enormous further development of its predecessors. The wall of the compressed air tank is stronger so as to resist no less than 300 bar pressure. The content of the tank suffices for 500 shots. The tank is refilled from a reserve air bottle. In 1990, Walther returns to the pre-compressed air system with the LPM1. The constructors have developed a docking lever system that requires only a slight exertion to work. With this system, the Diabolo projectile reaches the sensational speed of 150 meters per second. The CP200 was first produced in March 1996. The barrel jacket is made of duraluminum and has an integrated compensator. The anatomically formed butt plates can be swiveled lengthwise by 8 degrees. Along with the CP200, the CP201 comes out. Under the barrel is a weight bar with supplementary weights. As with the CP200, the rear sight is infinitely adjustable. Once more, evidence that Walther understands how to meet innovatively the needs of sport shooters. Its tank is installed vertically. This film on the Walther history and the weapons involved in it reflects the variety of the models, the accomplishments of the engineers, the determination of the founding fathers, and the growth potential of the firm under the new management. The legend will survive. Walther, a German legend. The 400-page book with many color photos and illustrations. Author Manfred Kirsten presents with this work the first comprehensive treatment of the Walther story. The book on the German flare and signal pistols up to 1945 by Wolfgang Kern. It covers all models of the Walther flare pistol.